While Metallica and Iron Maiden ruled the 80s, many brilliant bands were left behind. These 10 heavy metal underdogs deserved a spotlight they never got. Let's be honest, Cirith Ungol were just too strange for the 1980s, but that's exactly why they're so unforgettable now. This wasn't just a band, it was a full-blown fantasy novel brought to life. Riffs forged in lava, vocals that sounded like a wizard screaming from a mountaintop, and album art that looked like it belonged on a Dungeons & Dragons cover. When Frost and Fire hit in 1981, most listeners didn't know what to make of it. Tim Baker's high-pitched, agonized howls were light years away from all the macho growls dominating the scene. But for those of us who got it, it was pure magic. And King of the Dead, that's doom metal scripture, they vanished in 1992, misunderstood, and overlooked. But the underground never forgot. When they returned in 2016, it felt like an ancient prophecy fulfilled. Cirith Ungol didn't follow trends. They carved out their own weird, wondrous world, and decades later, it still gives us chills. Now, in a scene dominated by testosterone and aggression, Holy Moses kicked down the door, and Sabina Classen led the charge like a metal Valkyrie. Long before it was common to see a woman fronting a thrash band, Sabina was on stage in leather, screaming her lungs out and owning every inch of that spotlight. She didn't just belong, she ruled. Formed in Aachen, West Germany, Holy Moses blended razor-sharp riffs with a no-compromise attitude. Their 1987 album Finished with the Dogs didn't just bark, it bit. The speed, the rawness, the chaos, it all felt so real, so alive. And Sabina? Her guttural, snarling delivery put her in league with the best of the era. Holy Moses never cracked the US market like Creator or Sodom, but to thrash purists, they were something special. Sabina wasn't a gimmick, she was a pioneer, and decades later, she's still flying that thrash flag high. If that's not legendary, what is? Yes, I know you know who Anvil are now, but for decades, these Canadian metal pioneers were little more than a footnote. Despite helping to write the book on heavy metal, that was the whole point of Sasha Gervasi's iconic 2008 documentary Anvil. The story of Anvil, to remind us how criminally overlooked they've been. Even though they influenced giants like Lars Ulrich, Slash, and Tom Araya, Anvil's name rarely gets mentioned alongside the legends. Their debut, Hard and Heavy, dropped in 1981, with tracks like At the Apartment, oozing the kind of groove that would later help Judas Priest conquer America. By 1984, Anvil had earned enough respect to share stages at Japan's Super Rock Festival with Whitesnake, Bon Jovi, and the Scorpions. Their 1987 album Strength of Steel cracked the Billboard 200, but just barely, peaking at number 191. Then the 90s hit, metal changed, and Anvil got lost in the shuffle. Still, they never stopped. Today, they remain the ultimate metal underdog story. Decades of struggle, no surrender, and a catalog that still rips harder than most. I want this channel to be a catalog of 80s rock bands, and you can help me grow by subscribing. Sortilège felt like a secret, one of those bands you almost didn't believe existed until you heard them. And then, you were hooked. Formed in Paris in 1981, they played with the fire of Maiden and the soul of Dio, but they sang entirely in French, and that, as magical as it was, also held them back. Their 1984 album Metamorphose is an absolute masterpiece. Soaring, operatic vocals from Christian Augustin, razor-sharp solos from Stéphane Dumont, and melodies so good they hurt. Tracks like Délire d'un fou and Majesté are the kind of songs that make you close your eyes and fist pump at the same time. It's pure, unfiltered European metal, but the language barrier and lack of international label push kept them in the shadows. English versions of their songs were recorded, but they lost their magic in translation. Still, ask any diehard collector or Euro metal fan, and they'll tell you, Sortilège weren't just good, they were sacred. You know, Omen didn't just play metal, they waged war with it. Born in Los Angeles in 1983, they weren't chasing trends, they were carving runes in steel. Their debut album, Battle Cry, in 1984 hit like a catapult, unleashing anthem after anthem, and J.D. Kimball's voice, it was pure thunder. Powerful, haunted, unforgettable. He didn't sing lyrics, he battled them. Tracks like Death Rider and The Axeman sounded like ancient war chants blasted through Marshall stacks. Omen brought mythology to life with galloping riffs, fearless storytelling, and a raw, unpolished edge that made them feel dangerous. They didn't play for radio, they played for warriors. But timing can be cruel. The spotlight shifted, the thrash wave took over, and Omen remained underground, gathering a cult following that grew quietly, fiercely loyal. When Kimball passed away in 2003, it wasn't just a loss, it was heartbreak. Today, at European festivals like Keep It True, you'll still hear Omen's name chanted like a battle cry, and rightly so. In 1986, Ruler of the Wasteland landed like a thunderbolt, an album that screamed power, precision, and passion. At its core were two unstoppable forces, David T. Chastain, whose guitar playing fused classical flair with raw metal energy, and Leather Leone, a vocalist who didn't just front the band, she commanded it. Leather's voice was fierce, wide-ranging, and full of grit. Less about polish, more about power. She brought authority to every line, giving songs like Angel of Mercy and The King Has the Power an almost mythic weight. Chastain, meanwhile, shredded like a mad alchemist, turning scales into spells. The band never played by the rules. They weren't flashy enough for glam, not chaotic enough for thrash, but that's what made them special. They carved their own path, defiantly and brilliantly. Years later, when Leather returned to the mic, it wasn't just nostalgia, it was a reckoning. Chastain wasn't a footnote in metal history. They were a storm you couldn't contain. Tokyo Blade always felt like a band on the brink. They had everything. The look, the riffs, the energy. In 1984, they were supporting Dio and Ozzy, sharing stages with metal royalty, and then it all started to unravel. In the same year, right before releasing what should have been their breakout album, Night of the Blade, original singer Alan Marsh was suddenly replaced. His vocals were already recorded, but the label insisted on redoing everything with newcomer Vicky James Wright. The last-minute shakeup derailed the buzz, and they lost precious momentum. Meanwhile, the NWOBHM scene was flooding with new bands. Tokyo Blade got swept aside, not for lack of talent, but because they couldn't catch a break. Too many lineup changes, too little stability. But listen to songs like Lightning Strikes or Night of the Blade, and you'll hear a band that should have been massive. They weren't missing the sound, they were just missing their moment. Before anyone heard a note of their music, Witchfinder General had already stirred up controversy. Their album covers, nude women sprawled across gravestones, mock satanic rituals in churchyards, got them banned from major UK record shops. It was shocking, yes, but also classic doom theater. Formed in the early 80s in Stourbridge, they were part of the NWOBHM wave, but their sound was something slower, darker, and heavier. Sabbath worship, pure and simple, but done with a raw, gritty charm that felt underground in all the right ways. Tracks like Burning a Sinner and Invisible Hate ooze early doom. They only released 2 albums, Death Penalty in 1982 and Friends of Hell in 1983, then vanished. No radio play, no arena tours, but their cult status only grew. For Doom fans, Witchfinder General wasn't just a band, it was a blueprint. Steve Grimmett wasn't just a vocalist, he was a force. With a shock of white blonde hair and a voice that could shatter walls, he gave Grim Reaper their identity. His soaring highs and theatrical delivery turned even the cheesiest lyrics into power metal gold. Grim Reaper became infamous thanks to their over-the-top music videos. See You in Hell, 1983, looked like it cost $10 in a fog machine, but fans loved it. It ran non-stop on MTV's Headbangers Ball. Instantly recognizable for its campy horror aesthetic, but behind the cult fame was a real band with real chops. Albums like Fear No Evil in 1985 and Rock You to Hell in 1987 delivered riff-heavy melodic metal that still hits hard today. Legal battles with their label killed their momentum, but Grimmett never gave up. Even after losing a leg, he kept performing until his death in 2022. A true warrior. Most metalheads heard Blitzkrieg before they knew Blitzkrieg, thanks to Metallica. When James Hetfield and crew covered Blitzkrieg on Garage Inc., it was a blazing tribute to the British band that helped shape early thrash. But who were these guys? Formed in Leicester in 1980, Blitzkrieg were part of the first wave of NWBHM. They weren't flashy. They didn't have a gimmick, but they had the sound. Raw, fast, melodic metal with grit and conviction. Their 1985 debut, A Time of Changes, features the original Blitzkrieg, as well as the crushing Armageddon and Hell to Pay. Despite their influence, they never got the push they needed. The production was rough, the label small, and their name faded as metal grew more commercial. But to collectors and diehards, Blitzkrieg represents something pure. An unfiltered, working-class metal spirit that still burns. They never hit the big time, but they helped build the big time. They didn't top the charts, but they shaped the sound. These bands mattered then, and they still matter now. Forgotten? Maybe? Gone? Never.